Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Animas Corporation, providing insulin delivery products for people living with diabetes and part of the One Touch family. And by Dexcom. Take control of your diabetes with the world's first continuous glucose monitoring system that sends glucose readings directly to your compatible smart device. Live life on your own terms with Dexcom. Hey, it's Stacey. This podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider.
This is Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
This week, JDRF Children's Congress, all about the event, and a conversation with one of the celebrities who's there. Actress Brec Bassinger was diagnosed at age 8, and she says it was when her mom shared another celebrity story that things turned around.
She brought in a People magazine article of Nick Jonas, and it was a huge article that he had just released about him having type 1 diabetes. And I remember my mom being like, see, Brec, you can still be an actress. Like, if he can do this, you can do that.
Brec is at Children's Congress this year meeting kids, and we'll be talking a lot about what the event actually is and how it keeps influencing participants even years later. Lauren Stanford attended as a child, and she now works in D.C.
The members of Congress really, really remember Children's Congress, and they really remember the advocates that they meet, especially when it's young people who are coming in and telling their stories. So really keep that momentum going, because the way you get anything done on Capitol Hill is building relationships.
Plus, Bike Beyond. We'll hear from another rider this week as they continue their goal of traveling from New York to California this summer. I'll talk to Silvi Pold, who calls the cross-country bike ride an audacious goal. It all starts now on Diabetes Connections. Welcome to another week of the show. I am so glad you found us or just continue to tune in week after week. I'm Stacey Sims, and here on Diabetes Connections, we aim to educate and inspire about type 1 diabetes by sharing stories of connection from celebrities, athletes, and advocates in our community, as well as featuring people who aren't writing bestsellers or completing Ironman races, but, just living with type 1 diabetes. My son was diagnosed just before he turned 2, 10 years ago. I spent my career in local radio and TV news, started this podcast in 2015, and so here we are. All right, so JDRF Children's Congress is a very cool event. It happens every 2 years and gets lots of headlines and attention. And before we talk about that and about Bike Beyond, as we are doing every week with the great folks of Beyond Type 1, until Bike Beyond wraps up in California later next month, I just want to take a second right here at the beginning of the show and thank you all for your support in the People's Choice Podcast Awards. I linked that up last week, and I will do so again. You can only vote once, which is great. Last year, they were asking people to vote every day, which was kind of nutty. So I really appreciate the change this year. But you can vote for lots of podcasts. As I said, I'll link it up at diabetes-connections.com. And it's pretty cool how a very niche podcast like this one is getting some national attention. And I like that because, it's always cool to see your show get some attention, but the more people we reach, we have such a small community, right? And the more people who hear about Diabetes Connections, the more people we can find who need that inspiration, need that education, and who want to tell their stories. So I'm really excited about that, and I appreciate your help in spreading the word. Another great way to do that is to get the app. I have an app for Android and for Apple. Just look for Diabetes Connections wherever you get your apps. And you can then share the show right from the app. You can text it to people, which I still think is pretty wild. You can also listen wherever you're listening right now, Facebook or Twitter or on any podcast app. We're everywhere. But I really do appreciate that. And the reason the show has grown as it has is because of you, because you are telling friends in our community to tune in. So thanks very much for that. All right, lots of great stories to tell you this week. First, a quick word from one of our terrific sponsors from Animas. Choosing an insulin pump is an important decision, and I feel very fortunate that our certified diabetes educator really worked with us to educate us about all of our options. She listened to what we wanted in an insulin pump. After more than 10 years with Animas, I know it was the right decision. Benny was 2 when we started with Animas. He is 12, and we continue to be impressed with everything, including the stellar customer service. That's why I'm so glad to be able to tell you about our experience and why I'd really urge you to learn more about Animas insulin pumps. Just go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Animas part of the One Touch family logo. Love that music, and it means it's time to check in with Bike Beyond. This week, meet Silvi Pold, who was diagnosed at age 8, just like our other upcoming guest. Actress Brec Bassinger was also diagnosed at 8. Well, Silvi does not like to sit still. She is a certified scuba diver. A lot of backcountry hiking, she says. She loves yoga, rock climbing. Here's her quote. I love it. "Any adventure I can do," she says, "I'll try it at least once." She also talks to me about connecting with other adults with type 1 and how that really changed and influenced her outlook. Like many riders, this is always so funny, she was not a big fan of the idea when she first heard about what Bike Beyond wanted to do, but she's a fan now. Here's my interview with Silvi Pold. So tell me about yourself. When were you diagnosed with type 1? What was that like?
Well, I was young. I was 8. I was diagnosed in 1989. And so to be honest, I don't really remember a whole lot. I guess most of what I remember is kind of more just from what my mom told me. I was really sick though. I remember at least for like 2 weeks, I was kind of just in like a zombie world where I would get up and I would go to school, but I remember just feeling awful, and I would come home and I would just get on the couch and I would probably just I would fall asleep. And then my mom would try to wake me up for dinner and I would be like, no, I don't want to eat anything. And then she would try to force feed me something. And by like 7 o'clock at night, I would be back in bed, and I would just kept getting up and doing it over again. And so she tells me now that she kept waiting for me to say like, I don't want to go to school today. And until that happened, she just thought like, well, it can't be that bad then. And then eventually she was like, okay, no, this has been going on for a long time. I need to take her into the doctor. And my pediatrician was amazing. I think we basically walked in. My mom was like, this is what's happening. And he was like, here, go pee in this cup. I bet you're a diabetic. He like knew just by looking at me. And then he was like, okay, great. Like you have sugars. You have to go to the hospital. And I remember my mom being like, oh, can we go home and like pick up pajamas or something? And he was like, no, like you need to go to the hospital right now. And so that's what we did. And I think I was in the hospital for about 2 weeks. And I remember they told me I wasn't allowed to leave until I started taking my own needles. So I remember practicing on oranges and things like that. But I don't remember freaking out about it too much. Like I think I was a good age where I was like old enough to be able to do all this stuff. Like them saying you have to be able to do this yourself was fine. But I was also young enough that it was just sort of like, okay, whatever, just give me the needles, tell me what I need to do, and let's get on with this kind of thing. So, I mean, not that like obviously no diagnosis is great or anything, but I kind of feel like I feel like I was diagnosed at like the right time in my life.
And you're from Calgary?
Not originally. I grew up in Ontario, but I call Calgary home now. Yes.
Okay. Great. Yeah, I think it's funny. The age 8, my son was diagnosed when he was 2 and he's 12. And I always laugh. I think that 6, 7, 8, 9 is like this golden age because the child,
right.
They still want to please you. They still like their parents.
Right. Yeah.
They're old enough to actually do stuff. You know, it's not like a toddler. You're not going to teach him how to give himself shots. But it's certainly not like a tween when they're like, ugh.
Yeah, you just want to rebel against everything.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny.
Yeah.
Okay, I know. Oh, it's wonderful.
Definitely, just because I was diagnosed earlier doesn't mean that I avoided those rebellious teen and tween years, though. Like, they definitely still happened.
So why did you get involved with Bike Beyond? What led you there?
Oh, man. Well, I'd been following Beyond Type 1 just on social media for like a while or whatever. And then when the Bike Beyond popped up, I think my first reaction was disappointment, because I was convinced that I hate cycling. Like I was like, I was like, why do they have to be cycling? I was like, I wish that they were like going for like a big backpack or like going to do the Appalachian Trail or pretty much anything else active except for cycling. So I was like, wow, like that sounds like an awesome adventure, but like it's totally not for me. Like I can't even fathom being on a bike for 5 minutes, let alone 10 weeks. But then like the seed was planted and I could not stop thinking about it. And I had recently gotten involved with a group in Canada where what I like to call is they have like adult diabetic sleepaway camps. And so I had spent some time being like alone with only like surrounded by other type 1s who are active. And it was just like the most amazing experience. And so, yeah, I just couldn't stop thinking about Bike Beyond. And I was like, I'm going to regret it forever if I don't do this. So I'm like, at least I can apply. And then either they won't accept me or like I don't have to say yes or whatever. But I knew deep down that I was probably going to get accepted and that I was probably going to end up doing this. And so I better just like suck it up and learn to love bike riding and do it because like it's important to me. Like I'm obviously passionate about diabetes for obvious reasons. And so I guess, yeah, my passion about wanting to show the world what living with this disease is actually like was stronger than my self-perceived hate of cycling. And now it turns out I don't actually hate cycling. It's not that bad. It's funny what having the right equipment and the right motivation can do for something like that. So,
and I will ask you more about how you got to enjoy the biking, but you said sleepaway camp for type 1 adults. Tell me about that, because I know a lot of type 1 adults who missed camp as kids or who went and would love to go again.
Yeah, well, I went one year and I didn't really like it. I'm not sure why, but whatever. Anyway, as a kid, I didn't like sleepaway camp for diabetics. But yeah, there's a group up here and they're called Connected in Motion.
Oh, yeah. And
so they're basically all about like active adult type 1 living. And that's kind of their idea, is that once they got too old for camp, there weren't really like resources and community for adult type 1s anymore. And they kind of felt lost without having that social connection and stuff around. So they made their own basically. And so they do different activities like throughout some of the major cities in Canada. Like sometimes it's just like a meet and greet at like a restaurant or whatever. Sometimes they'll go rock climbing. They do different things. And so then they also have these longer ones where they'll go on like either like week-long canoe trips or they do some hiking. And then they have these weekend kind of getaways that's it. It's only type 1s, like no significant others. It's only adults. And you just get together with like-minded people who are also like not like they want to be active. So you learn by doing and you just learn from talking to each other. And then they also bring in either like diabetic nurses or like other kind of people to kind of talk about different things. And you just get to learn that way. And the first time I did it, it was life-changing. It was amazing. And I think that's probably what really kickstarted me, like going online and finding Beyond Type 1 and finding these other groups and realizing that there's all these adult diabetics out there that you can connect with and learn from and just have this great experience of like people who just get it.
So what was your reaction when you found out you were accepted into Bike Beyond?
I guess it was mixed because at that point I hadn't started riding yet. I was like, I'm not gonna start riding until I know that I'm going to be doing this. So I think I kind of had a feeling that not that many people were going to be able to apply for this. So I felt like most people who applied were just going to get accepted, just kind of as a numbers game. So I was sort of like, yeah, okay, like here's the acceptance. Like I got in, and a little bit my heart sank, and then a little bit I was like, okay, this is going to be amazing. And it's time to I just got to jump in. Like now this is just going to become my life now. And then, yeah, then like the more I kind of was like getting to like, I got to know the team and things like that, it's just been getting like more and more exciting. And it's been amazing. Yeah. And I was right. If I hadn't done this is something that I would have regretted forever. So I'm glad to be in it now and not just watching from the sidelines as this other group of people go and have this awesome adventure. I'm glad I'm going to get to go with them.
And we're talking pretty much right before it starts.
Yeah.
What are the challenges that you're worried about? What are you looking forward to? You know, what's going through your mind?
So many things. I don't know if the podcast is long enough for all of that's going through my mind, but I guess honestly the thing that I'm the most excited about, because I am active. I do a lot of stuff, and I'm usually the only type 1. So I'm actually really excited that like when we stop for breaks, I'm going to have time to do everything that I need to do already, like pee and eat and stuff, but I'm also going to have enough time to check my blood sugars. Like usually when we go in, they're like, okay, it's break time. Like I stop and I check my sugars and I do whatever. And then everybody's like, okay, ready to go. And then I'm like, oh man, I didn't eat, I didn't pee, I didn't do all these other things that you guys have been doing because I've taken my time to do all this other stuff. So I like that that's going to be kind of already built into the to the summer, which is silly, but it's like just one of those small things that like people just don't really realize, right? And then also like being surrounded by these people 24/7 is also a little bit terrifying, but I think, yeah, it's just going to be amazing. It's going to be adult diabetic sleepaway camp for the entire summer. And I just can't wait to meet everybody. We've been getting to know everyone, each other in our Facebook group, but to meet in person and just, I think we're already getting along really well. And I think it's going to be an amazing, big family of just learning and growing with each other and supporting each other along the way. This team is amazing. I can't get over how awesome everybody seems already. So I'm super excited about that. And then as far as being scared, well, now that the weather's starting to warm up and it's not even that warm yet, I'm already sweating my face off when I go out on my bike ride. So I can't imagine what it's going to be like when it gets actually hot out. And then I'm just nervous about everything diabetic because that's just the way life is with type 1. And I know I'm gonna have lows, I'm gonna have highs. How am I gonna handle those? So I'm just trying to calm myself on those, that this is the stuff that I've been dealing with every day for almost 30 years now. And it's always there. It's never stopped me from doing anything. And this ride's not going to be any different. I just have to trust that I know what I'm doing, and I'm going to figure it out when we get out there.
Oh, that's great. Any advice for people who are not doing this event? Newly diagnosed families or newly diagnosed adults who are looking at these people and thinking, how am I going to get through the next month, let alone these guys are on their bikes all summer riding across the country. What do you hope people take out of this?
I guess especially for newly diagnosed people, I think the one thing that I would like to say is just that it does get easier. I know it seems totally overwhelming and there's so much to learn and so much to know, and things are kind of always changing and whatever, but it gets easier. I don't know. Now I just sort of, diabetes sucks. I'm not going to sit here and say oh, it's the greatest thing that's ever happened to me or whatever. But you just grow with it. You just learn what works for you. And, it just gets easier. It's kind of always there. It's sort of just this shadow that follows me around. And some days it likes to be front and center and have all the attention. And other days it just kind of hangs back there and it's just sort of in the background. But yeah, it just gets easier, and there's absolutely no reason that diabetes should stop anyone from doing anything. If I can go and do all the crazy stuff that I do, then there's no reason that anybody else can't do that. It's so cliche, but it's cliche because it's true.
Yeah. What would success on this trip look like to you? When you get to the West Coast and you're we did it, what will have made it a success for you?
I think that's it. Just getting there. I don't people kind of ask me about that too. And other, cyclists, people I know that have cycled across America already, and they've either done it on their own. So they had to cycle every mile and stuff. Whereas I think we're in a bit of a different situation because we have to take turns driving the vans already. So we're already not cycling every mile. So to me, success isn't going to be doing every mile because that's just not going to happen. So I think it really is just kind of getting there, because if I, on some days I might have a bad day where I meant to cycle that day and I can't, and that's okay. It's not I need to do a certain amount of miles to feel like I've won this. I think I just doing it even is all. Really, I don't have any high set standards or anything. I think just doing it is enough, because it's already a pretty big audacious goal, I think, for me anyway.
I agree. I think just finishing would be wonderful. I mean, that's that's it. my biggest thing is just to get to the end and to not get hurt, basically. Yeah. So, was there anything else that you wanted to add?
No, I guess that I'm super excited, and I hope everybody else is, and I hope everybody follows us along, and that we can inspire some other type 1s and non-type 1s also. I mean, we're trying to get the word about type 1 diabetes, but I think it's just great for anybody in life to just have great adventures and do crazy things. So
excellent. Well, thank you so much for talking to me. I appreciate it. I look forward to checking in with you on the road.
For sure. Thank you.
More information about Silvi, I will link up to her fundraising page and on Bike Beyond as well at diabetes-connections.com. Bike Beyond is a fundraiser. Beyond Type 1 gives to terrific diabetes causes. You can check out their webpage. They're very open about where the donations go. But every biker on the trip has a goal, has a fundraising page, and they are just doing a great job. And for those of you who have already donated, and I've heard from many of you who have, it's very much appreciated. It doesn't have to be a lot. Every little bit definitely counts. And I'm thrilled that Dexcom is a sponsor of Bike Beyond because they are a sponsor of us as well. And, if you listen to the show a lot, I'm trying to raise my kids with independence, confidence, and responsibility. And I was pleasantly surprised to find that using the share function of the Dexcom system helps. Using the separate Dexcom Follow app, we can help Benny manage diabetes in real time at school, at a friend's, sleepover, overnight field trip. And that gives us peace of mind and helps him feel like diabetes isn't holding him back. With the Dexcom G5 mobile CGM system, dynamic glucose data can be accessed and shared safely and conveniently anywhere, anytime, to your compatible smart device as long as there is an internet connection. The Dexcom G5 Mobile is the only CGM approved for adults and children ages 2 and older with diabetes. Do not make treatment decisions based on share and follow readings. Always confirm with your compatible smart device or Dexcom receiver. For more information, go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Dexcom logo.
You're listening to Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
JDRF Children's Congress it takes place every 2 years, and I'm going to read you the description from their website. Every 2 years, more than 150 children living with type 1 diabetes gather in Washington, D.C. to meet face-to-face with some of the top decision makers in the U.S. government. The children, ages 4 to 17, represent all 50 states and the District of Columbia. The delegates enjoy a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to help members of Congress understand what life with type 1 diabetes is like and why research to fund life-changing therapies until a cure can be found is so critical. They speak up on behalf of the millions of people living with T1D and the families and friends who love them. We are going to learn a lot about Children's Congress today from JDRF, from the celebrities who attend, and from a person who attended as a child years ago and says it really influenced how she pursued a career. So you're going to be hearing from Alisa Norris, the Chief Marketing and Communications Officer at JDRF, and she is the mother of 2 type 1 kiddos. She's going to lay out the basics of JDRF Children's Congress. Then you'll hear from Brec Bassinger. She was diagnosed 10 years ago at age 8. She's co-starring in an upcoming movie called Status Update, and we'll talk more about that. But Brec is going to Children's Congress for the first time. And you'll also hear from Lauren Stanford, who has attended Children's Congress twice, once as a delegate, once as what they call kid chair. Lauren is now a young adult working in the Washington, D.C. area, and she shares her experiences then and how it influenced her now. So a lot going on here. Let's start with Alisa Norris. Well, Alisa, thank you so much for joining me. I know this is a very busy time. Tell me a little bit about what Children's Congress is, what you all hope to accomplish.
Gosh, Children's Congress is held biennially, and it's the largest grassroots event that supports type 1 diabetes research. We bring together about 165 children, all of whom have type 1 diabetes. They're as young as the age of 4, going through age 17, and they represent all 50 states, including the District of Columbia, and even Australia, Canada, Denmark, Israel, and Netherlands and UK send a few representatives because of our affiliates there and our global footprint. But it's really an opportunity for us to tell our congressional leaders the importance of type 1 diabetes research, and our children tell their stories. They tell their stories about living with T1D, how their lives have changed with T1D, but most importantly, how research into T1D is meaningfully going to impact their lives and the lives of all those we anticipate is going to have this disease by the year 2050. The number is going to probably swell here in the U.S. to 5 million people, whereas today about 1.25 million have the disease. So research is such a critical component for us to make sure that we're able to find a cure that really helps make sure that number doesn't grow.
And Alisa, we're going to talk about Children's Congress here for the most part, but I have to stop you there. 5 million? That's a JDRF projection?
It is, by the year 2050.
Wow.
Yeah, it's tough. And, Stacey, I don't know if your listeners are aware of this, but, each year about 20,000 children and 20,000 adults are diagnosed with T1D, and that's over 100 people a day.
So let's talk about what actually happens here, because we've seen the pictures of the cute kids, and, you know, a lot of us have a local representative going, you know, that we've known or seen on social media. What do the kids actually do? When you say they're telling their stories, I assume they're not all testifying in front of Congress. Are they meeting? Do they get FaceTime? How does it work?
Sure. Yes. No, absolutely. So all of our delegates go and meet with their local representatives. And, you know, the reason that they do that is they want to tell their stories and really let our representatives know how funding research is going to ensure, like agencies such as the FDA are doing their part to advance new treatments. We really want to remind Congress that research is going to help to improve these children's lives and everybody else's life who is touched by type 1 diabetes. So they have a very busy few days. We spend a lot of time with them talking about the research, so the children really have a strong understanding. They've been on multiple, actually, calls in advance of getting to DC, but really, again, bringing the research to life for them so they really understand how the special diabetes program in particular is helping to unlock science that's going to make their lives better over time, and has. And then what they do is we do have a hearing with the Senate. That is scheduled to happen on Wednesday. Obviously, not everyone can testify, to your point, but what everyone can do is use their voice when they do meet with their local representatives.
Can you tell us a little bit about what the SDP is?
Sure, I would be happy to. So SDP stands for the Special Diabetes Program, and it was established back in 1997, and it's really wonderful because it's received bipartisan support from Congress ever since. And what it is it funds $150 million per year, and that's about a third of all the federal government research on T1D funding through the NIH. And it complements, the other $3 billion that's been invested in the T1D research space in the past, sort of call it 45, 46 years since JDRF's founding. You know, since SDP's inception, it's shown really tangible results by helping scientists make significant advancements in prevention studies, in cure therapies, just like the artificial pancreas technology that was recently approved by the FDA. So it really has had a lot of tangible benefit.
You have 2 boys with type 1. You have 4 children, right? And 2 kiddos with type 1.
I do.
And they were diagnosed young, like my guy. And I'm just thinking, I can't imagine my child at the age of 4 or 5 talking to a congressperson. And I mean, I guess I could think about it and being cute. But what do the little kids do? Do they just say, here I am and I'm cute, and here's this, and then my mom will tell you more? I mean, I just wonder how that works.
No. So you know what? These children, they are brave and they're strong and they're advocating for themselves and the community. And each of our children put together a scrapbook. Clearly, it's the 4 and 5-year-olds who have more help from their parents in creating their scrapbook to tell their personal narrative to their representative. But gosh, each and every one of these delegates, they use their voice, they tell their story, they show their scrapbooks. And, we feel very fortunate that all of our congressional leaders do view SDP and research as a bipartisan issue and want to meet with the children and hear their stories. So it's a lot of fun. It's very moving.
I would also think that for a representative, it's more fun to meet with a 4 or 5 or 6-year-old than the lobbyists they usually have to deal with.
Probably. And they're probably actually much more entertaining to meet with than the parents, too. But it really, is something that has made an impact on our congressional leaders. I mean, Children's Congress started back in 1999, and we've been there every other year since.
Did I read it started because one family said we should do something like this?
It's really interesting because a lot of JDRF's history is rooted in the fact that we had grassroots involvement from families who wanted to take action. And that is a common theme. It's not just around Children's Congress, but it's a theme that's really important in our history. But almost everything around our history really does come back to those families who've been affected by the disease and want to make a difference.
So let me ask you a question I don't know that you can really answer in too much detail, but I know people want to know, how do you pick the kids?
Oh, it's hard. You know what? We are very fortunate to have so many more children putting in applications than we have spots. And in that regard, we wish each and every child could go. It's a math problem when you think about the number of meetings that our representatives can have in this short period of time. But it's really, we try to get a diverse group of children who have very different stories in terms of how they cope with the disease on a day-to-day basis, how they were diagnosed. We also really try to have these children who want to tell stories about how research has impacted their lives, and we have a really significant number of children who have been in clinical trials, because it really then brings the message to life when we go to our representatives and talk about the importance of funding. You have children there who can talk about the trials that they've been a part of. It's really powerful. You know, you mentioned, Stacey, too, about my two children. One of my children, who was diagnosed 6 months after his brother, he was diagnosed as the result of a trial, which is TrialNet. And TrialNet is funded as a result of the Special Diabetes Program. And we saw that he had 3 biomarkers. So we knew that he was on the path to having type 1 diabetes. We were hopeful he would actually get into the trial and perhaps be on oral insulin to be able to stay it off for a while until researchers could find more breakthroughs. Unfortunately, he was then asymptomatic, but it's really because of that trial that he never had to be hospitalized. We knew as a family that he had the disease, and we just had to watch for that first time his blood sugar spiked. So, gosh, when I think of clinical trials, when I think of SDP, it's had a really personal impact on my own narrative and my own family.
How are your kiddos doing? How are your sons? They're teens now?
They're tweens, yes. Well, one's a teenager. So I have 4 children, as you mentioned. Ben is 15, Jamie's 13, Andy's 11, and Claire is 9. And it's Andy and Jamie, my 13 and 11-year-olds.
I'm laughing because mine is 12, so I hear you.
You know how hard it is. They both have T1D, but I will tell you it's a family disease, and that, gosh, their older sibling Ben and their younger sister Claire do a lot to remind them to take care of themselves. I think that's the normal part of becoming a tween and a teen, which is you want to be completely independent, and their siblings are very much making sure that they're taking good care of themselves. They love sports. They're really, really active, and they're doing well. So thank you for asking.
Oh, you're welcome. I laugh because I'm sure there are some teens and tweens out there who are great, right? They've got it all down, not just diabetes. They are just focused and responsible, and I don't know those kids. So I always like to check in and make sure that my experience is, quote, normal. I have a 15-year-old daughter as well who doesn't have type 1, and never a dull moment around here. One of the fun things to watch from afar at Children's Congress are and I guess you call them special friends, some of the people who drop in who are well known. A couple of years ago, my cousin was actually lucky enough to get selected for Children's Congress, my young cousin, and I have a great picture of him with Nicole Johnson, Miss America, who has type 1. Can you tell me a little bit about the people that are going to be interacting with the kids this year? That's always so great to see.
Absolutely. Well, you start with Nicole, and Nicole's going to be there, as a matter of fact. She's a fabulous role model in terms of all that she's done to support diabetes type 1 community for more than 20 years. And we have a really wide variety of other special friends. We have Brec Bassinger, who you're going to be speaking to. We have Max Domi. We have Charlie Kimball. And we're really fortunate this year that Paul Sparks, who you may know in his role on House of Cards.
Yeah, I definitely know who he is, yeah.
Yeah, so he's going to be actually testifying in front of the Senate on our behalf and in behalf of the T1D community to advocate for research. He was diagnosed back in 1999. He was only, I believe, 28 or 29 years old, and immediately was inspired to raise money for research, started running in the New York City Marathon thereafter, and he dedicates a lot of his time to T1D advocacy. So we are really fortunate that he's going to be able to lend his very powerful and important voice for our community when we're in front of the Senate at the hearing.
Yeah, I have a local Facebook group, and we try to get together of other parents of kids with type 1. And one of the moms, her son Miles, is a representative this year for Children's Congress. And she was talking about Paul Sparks. And a bunch of people didn't realize, because I don't know that he's been very public about it. I mean, he doesn't hide it, but he's well known for his role on House of Cards and other acting that he has done. But she had just found out that not only he had type 1, but he was going to be at Children's Congress. So we were all buzzing about it. So I can't wait to tell her that he's testifying. That's very exciting.
It is. It really is.
Cool. So you're really busy. I know these the Children's Congress days are very full. What would you hope that the families that attend take away, and then maybe families listening who would like to get involved? What's the takeaway here?
I think the takeaway is that, research is the key to making sure that the T1D community lives less burdened lives and safer lives until we finally find a cure. And we can't get there in terms of the amount of funding we need without everybody getting involved. Our congressional leaders are critical in that with SDP, and again, we are so fortunate to have their bipartisan support. But, really using your voice if you're listening to this podcast around the importance of research. And it goes beyond research. It's also advocacy. But really, those research dollars is what's going to make a big impact in the lives of the T1D community.
And I meant to ask you this earlier. I know JDRF does have critics and people who say that Children's Congress is more of a PR stunt. It's for the pictures. The kids are cute. How would you respond to that?
Gosh, I guess I respond as a mom, too, which is, your child has it's a difficult disease. It's a devastating disease in terms of what they need to do on a day-to-day basis to stay safe. And this is an important opportunity for us to continue bipartisan support around research. Yes, children may be able to tell a really powerful, impactful story, but ultimately it's about that research and the criticality of that. And what better way to hear about how lives are impacted with T1D than to hear it from children who have to take on a lot more responsibility at a much younger age than the average person who is born without having this autoimmune disease.
Alisa, thank you so much for sharing your story and for talking to me about Children's Congress.
Thank you, Stacey. And thank you for all that you're doing.
Every year at Children's Congress, they try to bring in celebrities and role models, people who can really get the kids and the families fired up, and of course who can speak to Congress and who can speak to the press and really tell their own stories of success with type 1 diabetes. And one of the people going this year is Brec Bassinger. Brec is an actress very well known for the title role in Bella and the Bulldogs. That's a Nickelodeon series. That's how we first learned of her. Love that show. It's one of the shows, there's just some kids shows that you can actually watch with your kids, and they're not terrible. And they're fun. And that's what Bella and the Bulldogs was. Really fun show. We didn't even know Brec had type 1 diabetes for a very long time. It's certainly not part of the show. But she has since gone on to do a lot of TV acting, and she is in the upcoming movie called Status Update with Olivia Holt and Ross Lynch. And if you don't know who those people are, ask your kids because they are big Disney stars. So that's a movie that's coming out later this year. Brec is very busy, but she was excited to go to Children's Congress. She is excited to meet with the kids and the families that are there. And I need to, warn you before we start the interview that I did something different here. I let Benny, my son, sit in on the interview. He's a big fan of Brec's, and he's the one who started watching Bella and the Bulldogs, so I felt like I owed him one. So here's our interview with Brec Bassinger. Brec, thanks so much for making some time. I know how busy you are, and I really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
No, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to you.
This is a busy year for you. Lots going on. Let's start by talking about your partnership with JDRF and those shoes. What is that all about? Those shoes look cool.
Thank you. So I am a national ambassador for JDRF. And so when Guilty Soul, there was actually a type 1 diabetic at the company. And so they reached out wanting to do some type of collaboration. I was like, we have to do this. And so it was kind of just a process of figuring out what we wanted to do. And we came to the conclusion that we wanted to design a shoe and have a portion of the proceeds donated to JDRF.
It's called Guilty Soul, the company?
Yeah, Guilty Souls.
That's cool. How did you design the shoe? Was it something the style you liked wearing? Did you work with their designers?
Yes, I did work with their designers. They're not based in LA, so it was a little bit more difficult. We had to do it a lot over the phone. But at first, I sent them some inspiration pictures, and then they returned with me with some shoes, and we kind of just went from there with colors and exact design.
Is fashion something you'd like to get more involved in? I mean, we've seen lots of pictures of you on the red carpet, and it looks so glamorous.
Yes, I've always loved fashion. I'm actually addicted to shoes. It's a problem. But I find so much joy through different outfits, and I feel like the right outfit can make you just feel spunky or girly, and I absolutely adore that.
Let's talk about diabetes, because you were diagnosed about 10 years ago, right? Can you tell us your story?
Yeah. So I was diagnosed when I was 8 years old, and I was very fortunate in that my mom and my grandma and we were on like a girls' weekend vacation. So we were kind of secluded in a hotel room. So my mom was like easily noticed that there was something wrong with me. Of course, I dropped weight really fast. I was very moody, very thirsty. I was wetting the bed, which was not normal for me. And so when we got back home, my mom started looking up the symptoms, but we'd already like scheduled to go to the doctor's the next day. But she said, once she typed in the symptoms, she knew what the diagnosis was going to be because they all led to type 1 diabetes. So we went in, and I feel very blessed in the age I was diagnosed because I was old enough to understand what was going on, but I was young enough for it to just be my way of life. I don't remember a life without diabetes. I'm hoping one day I will return to that, but as of now, I don't remember it. And once again, I was very fortunate to have a supportive family, and this is something that helped me continue acting and kept, I guess, following my dreams in a sense. I remember being in the hospital, and my mom, she brought in a People magazine article of Nick Jonas, and it was a huge article that he had just released about him having type 1 diabetes. And I remember my mom being like, see, Brec, you can still be an actress. Like, if he can do this, you can do that. And I just remember being so excited, and any worries I had just dissipated.
Have you met him since then?
Okay, it's so funny. So he hosted the Kids' Choice Awards a couple years back, and I was there, and I kid you not, we ran into each other like 3 times. But since he was the host, he was always like being rushed around, and as was I, and so we never got to like actually meet. But I'm sure we will one day. I'm not worried about it.
Did you always want to be an actress? Was that something that, I mean, you were diagnosed at 8. It sounds like you were already into it.
Yeah, so when I was like 6, I wanted to be an astronaut, but then I found out the moon wasn't made of cheese, so acting was my next thing. Yeah, I always just loved performing and being in front of people, and I was always very persistent to my mom, like, I want to act, but she was like, every little kid says that. But once I was 10, she finally let me like go into acting classes, and the rest kind of just went from there.
I'm going to hand it over to Benny now to ask a couple of questions.
Okay.
Ready, kiddo?
Okay, so how did working on Belle and the Bulldogs with diabetes, like, work out? Like, was it hard? Was it, like...
Yeah, how'd you do it on set?
So it's funny. There was probably, like, a year and a half into being on set, and I invited everyone to go to the JDRF walk. And everyone was so shocked because hardly any of them even knew that I was type 1 diabetic. And I think that's one of the cool parts of diabetes. Like, you can have it, but no one even knows. There were, like, the occasional occasion that my blood sugar would go low on set, but I had like signals with my mom, and like there's the director, and so whenever like I would feel my blood sugar going low, someone would just like bring me a Rice Krispie treat, and I'd sit out for like 3 minutes and then be right back in it.
Yeah, that was actually my next question about being low while shooting.
Yeah, I didn't happen too much. I remember one time we were shooting the finale, and so we were on location at this big football stadium. And we had about 20 minutes left to film because when you're under 18, you can only work so many hours by law. And we were coming to the end of the 10.5 hours that I could work. And I felt my blood sugar going low. But we were doing football scenes, so I was running around being active. And I just remember being so stressed. I was like, I need to go eat for my blood sugar, but we only have 20 minutes left to film. Of course, everyone is like so nice, and they know like I have to take care of myself. So there was no problem, but my internal like self was like, oh no.
Yeah. So do you have a Dexcom? Do you use a pump, shots? What do you use?
I use the pen, and I tried using the Dexcom about like a couple months ago, but I guess I did it wrong. I put it in a really bad place, I think, because the first day that I wore it, it literally got knocked off within like 4 hours, and I'm like, I don't think I did this right. So I'm going to try it again because I'm soon going to be living by myself since I'm 18. So my mom really wants to like, I feel like the Dexcom would make her feel safer and everything.
Yeah. So with the Kids' Choice Awards and Nick Jonas, we had a chance to go and meet Nick Jonas 3 years?
It's like 4 years ago already, kiddo.
And
wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was fun.
But the thing is, he was shooting a movie, and we walk in, and he like pushes us to the side.
No,
doesn't
he
even
did
mention.
it.
Yes,
No,
he did it.
He was exhausted. He was so tired. He was trying to be nice. It was so funny. It was like a real meet and
Not how
greet.
I remember it.
We're hoping to meet him again
Like, I
because
remember it differently.
yeah, it was one of these like kids here, come take a picture. And then
bye.
But I mean, you can't. It was hard. I mean, he'd been working all day, and I wanted to ask you about that because talking about, like you said, shooting that finale for Bella and the Bulldogs and just being tired, it's pretty grueling work, isn't it? I mean, it's not just 5 seconds of work. How did you manage Type 1 in terms of when you would eat? Did you have a routine, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so fortunately, like, our set was very scheduled the majority of the time, Monday through Wednesday especially, because those were our rehearsal days. So we would have, like, a specific time to have lunch, and they always had snacks out. That was one of the biggest problems for me, because they always had such good food just sitting at, like, gourmet cakes, and, like, they would bring in, like, nachos or, like, make your own tacos in, like, the middle of the day, and it wasn't even lunchtime. I'm like, guys, you can't do this to me. Like, I can't just go and eat a taco. Like, I have to have my blood sugar, take a shot. So that was, like, honestly one of the biggest struggles for me is how much food they had. But they always had, like, a time, like, an hour or most of the time it was 30 minutes to, like, eat lunch. And then if we were there for 6 more hours after that, we would have, like, a dinner time as well.
So I ask this question of, like, everyone I meet. If you could go back in time to when you were diagnosed, what would you tell your younger self?
Oh, that's such a good question. I would tell my younger self not to worry. I remember I wasn't too worried, but I saw Actually, I'm gonna change your question a little bit. I would go back and tell my parents not to worry. So I remember being at the hospital, and I was fine. Maybe it was God being like, it's okay, but I never felt even sad about it, at least the first week of diagnosis. Of course, there were, like, the struggles within the first year, of course, but I would just want to go back and tell either my younger self or my parents, it's okay, it's fine, it's not going to change much at all.
Yeah, so I was kind of like you when I was diagnosed. I was sitting in the hospital bed, and my mom was next to me crying, and I was, like, sitting there like, it's going to be okay, Mommy.
Well, you weren't even 2 years old.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I know, it's like, we're like, it's okay. That's why, like, I feel like when you get diagnosed young, it's a lot easier. Like, those people that get diagnosed, like, when they're in high school, I think that would have been a lot bigger struggle for me, to be honest.
Yeah.
Okay, so not a diabetes question. What's your advice? There are a lot of people I know that are going to listen to this interview, a lot of young people who want to get into acting. I'm probably sitting next to one at the moment. Benny is really into acting right now. Football and acting, right.
We're match made in heaven.
That's funny. What would your advice be, though? It's such a tough industry.
My advice to anyone wanting to pursue acting is honestly just to look for either local playhouses or local acting classes. The majority of people I talk to, especially that aren't from California, that's how they started. I started taking acting classes. I took them for about 3 years. And through my acting school, I met other people that had what are called agents. And agents are like what send you out on auditions. And so when you meet these people who have agents, you can slowly make connections to these agencies. And once you get signed with an agency, they're the ones who send you out on auditions. So my advice is always just to be around people that also want to pursue acting and just start getting training behind you and hope for the best.
So this summer you're very busy. We're going to talk in a second about the new movie that is hopefully coming out pretty soon, but also about Children's Congress. I heard you're going to be at the JDRF Children's Congress for the first time this year. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes, I am so excited. I remember being 10 years old, and my mom and I sat down at the computer, and we worked on like hours, like write a letter to try to get chosen to be able to go, and I didn't get chosen. But now I'm getting to go, and I am just so excited. It's like one of my childhood dreams coming true.
Well, you know, it's really funny. I hate to keep saying things like this, but Benny, you filled it out when you were 10, and you didn't get chosen. He's not going this year because he's got a different camp that he goes to, and the timing's not right. But you've got to be so excited about doing that. It's going to be great.
I am so excited, and I'm also excited to meet like other kids, type 1 diabetics. I feel like I always have like an instant connection with them, and so I'm just excited to meet them as well.
Yeah, so with the new movie, working with Ross Lynch, what was the most challenging part of the movie to shoot?
The most challenging part of shooting the movie for me is that we were in a different country. We were in Canada for 6 weeks, and it is a hunk of the movie, but I'm not in, like, I'm used to being on the set of Bella where I'm in almost every scene, and going to this set where I'm not at all. I had a lot of days off, and so I was just like in a random country, like, and So I got to explore, but after like a while, you just want to go back home. That being said, that when I was actually on set, it was so fun. The cast is so nice. Like every single person, there was not one rotten apple. Everyone was so sweet. The director, he was amazing, brought like such high energy. So actual set was amazing. There's a saying, and I'm not sure if this is 100% correct, but it's something along the lines of like, actors are paid for waiting around, not the acting. Right. And that is the truest statement ever. Because when we're on set acting, we are perfectly content. When we are sitting around waiting to act, it is not fun.
This is probably a dumb question, but do you guys know each other, or did you know each other before the movie? I mean, Ross Lynch is on Disney, you had the show on Nickelodeon. It seems to us at home that you probably run into each other. That's probably not the case though, right?
No, it is actually Olivia Holt. I knew her like well, and I hadn't met Ross, but I know now, I would say I know almost every single person on Disney, Nickelodeon, vice versa. Yeah, we run into each other a lot at like different events and stuff.
That's great. You're looking forward to seeing you in the movie, but you pop up on TV all the time. I'm trying to remember what show I was watching. It was like a hospital show. And
Code Black.
Yeah, and you were in there.
That's so funny. You don't know how many people have come up to me and were like, I've seen you on Code Black. Like, not Belle and the Bulldogs, not School of Rock, the one episode I did of Code Black, and it cracks me up.
Well, it's a different audience, too, I guess,
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
So are you auditioning all the time? How does it work for you?
So right now I did a CBS pilot, and I'm under contract with them, so I can't audition for everything right now. But I'm still auditioning. Like, I have an audition today and tomorrow. I try to stay busy auditioning for things that work with the contract and stuff.
Now, I know nothing about pilots and all that stuff, but when will you know if it gets picked up?
Honestly, I don't think it's getting picked up. I'll probably be released from my contract in like the next couple of weeks, so it was great. Like, it was a great experience. It's something to put on my resume, and it was so fun. And it's CBS, which that's what Code Black is on. And honestly, it was like, they're such an amazing channel and company. Everyone there is so nice.
That's great. I had a couple of questions from Facebook and from my listeners, and we did ask most of them, but one or two people wanted to know if you feel like a role model. Do you get letters from other kids? Do you hear from other kids with type 1? And I guess that's something that you already are looking forward to at Children's Congress.
Yeah, I have. I've gotten quite a few different letters, and I do meet and greets at different places, and there will be type 1 diabetics there. And more of like, less of a role model and more of just a friend. I know that sounds so weird, but I said this before. Every time I meet another type 1 diabetic, I just feel this instant connection with them. And maybe that does inspire them. Just, I don't know. But for me, I feel inspired by them just to like feel this bond with other people that just completely understand you. I just take that over anything. I love that feeling.
You should come to Davidson.
Yeah, you should come to North Carolina.
I did. I came to, is it Charlotte?
Yeah.
I was at Charlotte for a meet and greet a while back.
We missed it. Darn.
Okay. Well, if I do another one, I always post about them. So
okay,
that would be so fun. I could if I do another one in North Carolina, I'll make sure my manager lets y'all know.
That's great. Benny, was there anything else that you wanted to ask? We're almost.
This is kind of a silly question.
I like silly questions.
There's this fidget spinner craze thing right now.
Oh my god!
Do you have one?
I don't have a fidget spinner, but all of my friends have one, so I don't even really need one.
I've been playing with one this entire time.
Oh my gosh. I was like, I don't get it. Like, those are so weird and dumb. And then I like started messing around with one of my friends, and like 2 hours later, I was still messing around with it. I'm like, okay.
That's how everyone reacts.
Yeah.
That's really funny.
Okay, guys. Well, it's been so fun. Thank you guys so much.
Oh, thank you.
This was fun.
Yeah, I really appreciate your time, and we'll stay in touch. Thanks, Brec.
Bye.
Sounds good. Bye, guys.
That was so much fun. She was so sweet, so nice to talk to. I have to explain the Nick Jonas story, and I almost edited it out, but you know what? That's Benny. It's for real. So here's what happened before we go on to talk about Children's Congress a little bit more. Several years ago, we met Nick Jonas, and as you heard, it didn't go very well for Benny. But what happened was, on pretty short notice, we got word from our local chapter that Nick Jonas was going to do a brief meet and greet. He was shooting a movie in Charlotte on the Carowinds grounds. That's an amusement park near here. They have kind of a campgrounds area, and that's where they were shooting part of the movie. So they invited a couple of us to go down, and Benny's older sister, my daughter, was super excited to go and meet Nick Jonas, but Benny didn't care. He has never really been a Nick Jonas fan. He said, that's for girls. Okay. So he grudgingly, it's so funny what gets into kids sometimes. We go down, and as happens with these situations, if you've ever been at a celebrity meet and greet, you wait quite often. So we're waiting outside at Carowinds, and the skies open up, and it starts to pour down rain. None of the buildings are open because we're there not during park hours. It was crazy. So they finally let us into a building. I think it was like a Cinnabon or an ice cream booth or something. And they gave us all towels. And then they put us into cars and brought us down to the campground. So soaking wet, we all squish into this building. And the crew is there and everybody's eating lunch. And then Nick Jonas came out. And I have to tell you, he did look absolutely exhausted. And he, contrary to what Benny says, he shook everybody's hands. He said hello to everybody. He took pictures. He signed all the stuff that any kid gave him. But he was a man of few words. And you could tell he was very tired. So my daughter was thrilled. And then he went off and we all had lunch with the crew and hung out. But my daughter was thrilled. Benny, as you heard, was not impressed. And that's the Nick Jonas story. So I kind of hope we get to meet him again. Don't tell him any of this if you meet him, okay? This never happened, but that's the real story. Okay, back to JDRF Children's Congress. My next guest is Lauren Stanford. Lauren attended Children's Congress when she was 11 years old, and she went back just a couple of years later as the kid chair. Her family was the chair, the mom chair, the dad chair. She was the kid chair. And I wanted to talk with her because she's now a young adult. She's on her own. She is working, professionally in the DC area. And we thought it would be great to get her perspective. What did she learn from Children's Congress? What did she take away from it? And for some of you, that Lauren's name is familiar. That's because her mother is Maura McCarthy Stanford. And Maura's been on the show several times. She is a very well-known author and speaker about diabetes. I tried to keep her out of this interview. Lauren and I, you'll hear, we're laughing about it. But I had to ask Lauren a couple of questions. So I had to bring her back in. So here is my discussion with Lauren Stanford. Lauren, so I want to take you back through memory lane, and talk about Children's Congress as you remember it. You were there twice, once as a delegate, and then once, your family was the chair. Do you remember that first experience in 2003? You were 11 years old. What do you remember about going?
I definitely remember, and it was extra exciting because I had applied either 2 or 3 times previous to getting accepted as a delegate. And it was even more exciting because it was all this anticipation, and I was very excited to get accepted, and I had never been to Washington, D.C. before, so I was really excited about that. And then, I had met kids through diabetes camp and things like that, but just meeting all of these kids that were different ages, boys and girls, and then getting to share our story with really important people on Capitol Hill. And I was raised to care. My parents really wanted me to care about government stuff even from a young age. So it was really, I was such a nerd when I got there. I was so excited to go to Capitol Hill and share my story. And it's still, you don't, when you get older, you don't keep a lot of memories that are vivid in your mind. But going to D.C. for the first time for Children's Congress was, I remember every moment of it.
Wow. Do you remember arriving? That's what I'm trying to think of, what it's like to go there. You've been, you were 11 years old. You'd had diabetes for a few years already. You were strongly advocating through JDRF in your community, but then to go and see the Capitol. Do you remember that moment?
Yeah, I do. And we flew into Reagan, which is the airport, I don't know if you know, in D.C., that flies over like the Capitol and all the different monuments when you fly in. And I was so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, look at all the monuments and all that stuff. And then when we got to the Capitol, I live in D.C. now, when I see it, but when you see it for the first time, it's one of those feelings where oh my gosh, this is where history is made, because it's the symbol of our country, really, the Capitol. So it was really awesome to see it.
Was it fun going to Children's Congress? It seems like it's a whirlwind.
Yeah, it was. So it's a lot of work in the sense of you have to prep for the Hill and practice saying your story and learn where you're going and everything. But they make it fun in the sense of they really want you to meet and bond with the other delegates that are there. And I'm still friends with people that I met at Children's Congress when I was a delegate. I made a bunch of really good friends, and we had a lot more fun than I thought I would together. I thought it was going to be mostly a work trip. So it was really nice to meet all these people and bond with them. And we did have a little bit of off time that we were able to have some fun, eat some meals, get to know each other. So it was great.
You know, it's funny. It's making me think in the olden days, when I went to camp, and not necessarily things like this, I'm trying to remember how everybody kept in touch, and we would write these things called letters. You know, I'm wondering how you all kept in touch, because in 2003, I mean, this is still pre-smartphone.
Yeah, so there was a lot of AOL Instant Messenger back then, so we would exchange screen names, and then we'd create these chat rooms that were like Children's Congress chat rooms, and we'd all chat with each other on things like that, which even that seems prehistoric when I'm saying it right now, but a lot of the internet has allowed for us to keep in touch more easily. And then when Facebook came around, I found some of the people from Children's Congress when I was an adult, and now we still keep in touch, and I see what they're doing all the time. So
that's fantastic. I love it. So what about in 2005? What does being a chair family mean? Obviously, your parents, had things to do. What did it mean for you?
Well, I knew that we were going to be very special when we showed up. I remember thinking, ooh, it's going to be fun. I love being the center of attention. So I was like, it's going to be fun to be the center of attention. But when we showed up, it was being the chair kid is what they called me, was a lot more work than it was being just an ordinary delegate, because you had to go to these important meetings. I ended up testifying in front of Congress while I was there as the chair kid, and it was a lot of preparation for that and a lot of meeting people. It wasn't, I thought it was going to be it was just as fun as when I went, but it was definitely a lot more work. But it was still, again, an experience that I'll never forget. I mean, how many people get to testify before Congress in their lifetime, never mind when they're a teenager. So it was really a very rewarding experience, and I did get to have a little bit of fun, even though it was a lot more work, and I met some really amazing people and I think one of the special things about Children's Congress is the number of meetings they get with actual members of Congress, not just the staff members. So I got to meet all of these members of Congress, and it was really incredible.
Well, and you mentioned you're working in Washington, D.C. now. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like, testifying in front of Congress, being exposed to that kind of environment, did that influence what you wanted to do with your life?
Oh, absolutely. I think that even before I went to Children's Congress, my family and I were involved with JDRF's government relations efforts. So we would do meetings with our members back in Massachusetts in our district, and that really got me interested in Children's Congress itself. And then when I got to go to Children's Congress and do lobbying, for lack of better words, myself, it really opened my eyes to how fun and exciting it is to influence Capitol Hill with a story. So now I'm working for the ALS Association, and I'm doing public policy for them, and I'm still doing the same type of work that things like Children's Congress do, where it's patient advocacy, which I hate to say that my parents led me to where I am, because who wants to give their parents credit for anything? And when you're a teenager, you're like, oh, I'll do what I want to do when I grow up. But they definitely knew that I had an eye for patient advocacy, and Children's Congress was the big start of that, I think, for me.
That's fantastic. What advice would you give to the families that are there right now? I mean, when this episode airs, it will be smack in the middle of Children's Congress, so it may be too late to set them up. But maybe for afterward, what would you recommend that they do to keep this experience as fulfilling as it can be?
I think think a few things. I think that the families, or at least the kids who meet other kids at Children's Congress, definitely stay in touch with the people that you meet and become friends with at Children's Congress, because they're all going to go different places in life, and you never know when you'll run into each other again. And it's really great to have that connection with people with diabetes. And then for the families, don't let Children's Congress be the only advocacy work that you want to do. Keep it up and follow up and keep doing more meetings and keep reaching out to your members, because the members of Congress really, really remember Children's Congress, and they really remember the advocates that they meet, especially when it's young people who are coming in and telling their stories. So really keep that momentum going, because the way you get anything done on Capitol Hill is building relationships, and really just enjoy the time while you're there. I mean, it doesn't have to be all work. Go out, see the monuments, meet some great people, enjoy the experience. You'll never forget it. So
let me ask you a devil's advocate question. You know, as a person who's living, I know you're all nervous. As a person who's living with type 1 diabetes, do you feel that Children's Congress makes a difference? A few people I've heard say, well, it's nice, but it's a PR opportunity. They take cute pictures. Do you feel it did make a policy difference?
I think so. I mean, I always say that kids are the best advocates, and JDRF, I can tell you from working down in D.C. in government relations, no one does government relations or advocacy quite like JDRF does, because kids are the most influential people on the Hill, because, you know, members of Congress and staffers are constantly meeting with adults like me, and we're not as exciting and fun as kids. So they remember these kids who come in and are so well spoken, and since they're picked from such a big pool, they're very smart, well-spoken kids that are going up there, and they do remember that, and I think that it is influential. And I mean, it's a weird time on the Hill, but I still think, even in my previous job, I did some diabetes work, and every person I met with would say, "Oh, diabetes, you have the kids who come up here on the Hill," so they do remember these kids. Is it a PR opportunity? Yes, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that PR is part of the process, so I think it is a good event.
Okay, so I have to ask you, your mom is Maura McCarthy. I know I said we weren't going to talk about your mom, but bear with me. This is a good context. And she has written and talked about her experiences, which is your experience as well.
Yeah.
You know, you guys, supermodel, wonderful JDRF family when you were first diagnosed, you know, as an elementary school kiddo, and then, you know, some difficult teen years. And I'm just curious, how are you doing? I know I hate to say that you're this public person in diabetes, but you know, your mother has written quite about you a lot about you in her books. So, you know, what's up? How are you?
I've accepted the role of being in the public eye, so don't feel bad asking. But things are really good. I was telling my mom a few days ago, actually, that I'm finally at the point where taking care of my diabetes doesn't feel like as much work and a whole ton of work, because when you're a teenager, I'm sure you've heard other teenagers say this, it's just so forced and you don't want to do it, and it's very like blah. But now it's just kind of second nature to me, and I moved 500 miles away from home, and I have a roommate, but I live on my own, and I'm doing great, and I do all of that despite diabetes, you know, so it's part of my life, but my life is good. My life is great. I have no complaints, and you know, diabetes is part of what made me who I am. So I am thankful sometimes I don't know how to say that correctly, but I'm thankful for the experiences and the life lessons it's taught me. But I'm doing really good.
I'm so glad
Thank you for asking.
Oh, of course. You know, I ask too. It's a very selfish question, because my son is 12, and his attitude is great, but his body is insane. And I'm not going to share too much because, I mean, how embarrassing. But you know, he's 12. You can guess. So for all the teenage and tween parents out there, kind of hang in, right? We're just going to be okay.
Definitely.
Don't go crazy.
Hang in there. No, and there were times where I felt like I am never going to be able to do this on my own. I'm never going to want to take care of my diabetes. And now, again, it's just second nature for me. And I think part of that is growing up and realizing this is my life. And you feel differently. I feel differently about it than I did than when I was a teenager. And it was, as you know, since my mom's so open about it, I had a lot of really hard years. So it wasn't easy to get here, but now it feels easier. So there's still good and bad days, but, it's part of life.
Yep. Cool. Well, thank you so much. Was there anything I missed about Children's Congress that you wanted to be sure to mention?
No. I think you got everything. I just want to make sure everyone has a great time, and I'm sure I'll see them down here when they're down here in all their same colored shirts.
Oh, are you going to, now, is that just something you would see in the course of your life on the Hill, or are you going to go?
Yeah. Well, I live very close to, the White House. I live very close to the White House, so I'll see groups going by often. So, and I always recognize the JDRF blue when they're in town. So
that's cool.
It's fun.
Very cool. Well, thanks for popping on with me. I really appreciate you doing this. It was fun to talk about your experiences.
No problem.
Lots more information about JDRF Children's Congress. All the things we talked about today, links to some of the things that Lauren talked about as well that were more personal, some columns that she and her mom have written, everything about Brec, JDRF Children's Congress, and Bike Beyond, as well as the podcast awards. All of those links are at diabetes-connections.com, and they're also in whatever podcast app you're using to listen. If you're listening on iTunes or Google Play or Stitcher, if you click on the show description, all of the links will be there as well. So please feel free to check it out that way. As always, you can reach me on social media or at Stacey at diabetes-connections.com. I am cooking up some fun shows in the weeks to come, lots of good information, and maybe some updates on some of the news that's happening in our community, a lot of tech news in the last couple of weeks that I'm looking forward to catching up on. Let me know if you have a story, if you'd like me to talk about anything that's going on in your neck of the woods. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. I'm Stacey Sims, and I'll see you back here next week.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.